Welcome to the Cesarea Gubernatorial debate. I'm joined here with Lieutenant Governor Wyatt DiChristopher for the Democrats, and for the Republicans, former State Delegate Epideli, no last name. Tonight, we'll start with opening statements, 2 minutes each, 2 minutes for each candidate. We're going to start. The coin toss chose Epideli, so we're going to start with the Republican gubernatorial candidate. Epideli, you may proceed. Your 2 minutes starts now.
First of all, I'd like to thank our CBS affiliate for broadcasting this debate. I was also as well be as grateful for the Boston Convention Center for hosting it, and of course for the Lieutenant Governor to attend it. Folks, this election will be crucial. Looking back and be looking at the full picture, Cesarea is and has been the most unstable state in the United States. We need an effective, proven leadership in Cesarea that knows how the system works and how we can improve it. We need a governor that has a diverse coalition of liberals, progressives, conservatives, and centrists, and all in between. Folks, the record is clear once again. As legislator, I worked with the Democratic and Republican governors to craft necessary things such as the establishment of our capital, the Constitution, the flag, the seal, and the first state park, the first Cesarian driver's plates, and hopefully soon our very first custom Capitol building. I hope I can get your vote and your confidence and hopefully prove myself in this debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Epideli. Lieutenant Governor DiChristopher, 2 minutes starts now.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Wyatt DiChristopher. I am the Lieutenant Governor of Cesarea. I first started out in my collection as a Caesarea assemblyman under Governor Chris Miller. I'm very proud of that. We have passed a lot and lots of legislation that help benefit the citizens of the Commonwealth of Caesarea, but we are not done yet. I have also been Secretary of State and a Caesarean state senator. But like I said, we are not done yet. This Caesarea has to be one of the most unstable state governments in America, and we need to fix it now. This is just it's unstable. The last governor, John Geller, he resigned, and we need to fix this like immediately. There has been no legislation passed in the state senate, I believe, until like what March 30th. There has been no legislation whatsoever passed. We need to fix this. This what I call is the state government shutdown that we have in Caesarea. This will lead to chaos if this does not get fixed soon. We need a leader who will lead, who will not act childish. We need a leader who has the experience, which I do, and we need to change Cesarea for the benefit of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiChristopher, and thank you for pitching the first question. The first question is about the instability of the Caesarian state government. I'm going to give it to Mr. DiChristopher first. What are your specific plans to address the instability in the Caesarian government, and what would you do as governor to push for and engage the members of the House of Delegates to actually do their jobs?
Well, easily. One of my first priorities is that I will create a new cabinet for Caesarea. I will create 6 cabinet jobs: the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Treasury, and the well, we already have Attorney General. Um, but I will create these jobs so they can engage with the state senators so they can pass legislation that is related to their department, because the state senate is not it's barely active. Like, it's barely active. There's no movement whatsoever in the government, and like I said, we need to fix this now. Not only that, but I will also create I would also draft a bill that if any state senator or any cabinet official, and even the governor and lieutenant governor, is found inactive for more than, let's say, a week, that they will get voted to get impeached. And I'm saying this because this needs to stop now.
Thank you, Mr. DiChristopher. Mr. Epideli, same question to you. How would you fix the stability in the government, and what would you do specifically as governor to engage the House of Delegates?
Well, first of all, I'd like to. I've always believed this. The issue that Caesarians have is not the issue of not having enough people in the head. I think there's way too many people. The more positions that we have in that government, the more places people can go inactive. And I think that we'll have to possibly amend the Constitution, add another amendment to it that would address the issues that we're currently facing, such as mass resignations and possibly even snap elections and inactivity issues. Cesarea is just way too unstable. And as looking as a crafter of the Constitution, I can see that it has to be a constitutional amendment. Nothing else, nothing short of that. Plain and simple.
Well, what exactly would the constitutional amendment do? You said to address mass resignation, but how can you, in a constitution of a state, address mass resignation of political offices?
I would in the amendment we'd have to look at this would in the same amendment would also address the inactivity. Uh, I think mostly what would have to do is affirm once again the necessity of the resignation line and the secession line. And these members have to be active before that they are becoming that role because if someone's inactive, they would never know that they were appointed to a role. Or what we could do is add an amendment that would prevent the uh, justice of the Supreme Court from for getting those people into the offices and hope the person must be active at least a week or two before that they are sworn into the office. And if they are not, they won't be sworn into the office. Instead, it will go down another line into the next person.
So just to clarify, you support adding activity requirements that you have to have
Sure, sure.
to the ballot access. Mr. DiChristopher, would you support a measure to add activity requirements to running for an election? For example, to run for House D9 or a state, or not House D9, that is federal election, to run for one of the state delegate seats or the governor election, you'd have to have a minimum amount of activity of 2 weeks or so. Would you support something like that?
Absolutely. And here's why. Because if we do not do nothing about this, if we just like sit around and then just like let this happen, how are we going to get things done? We need things done in the state. This is just crazy. So I 100%.
Okay, so uh, any rebuttals to anything that was said by either candidate? Okay, great. You both agree. Sick. That's something that doesn't often happen. This next question, I'm sure you both will not agree. On the campaign trail, you both have expressed opposing opinions on Governor Geller's controversy that he brought on himself
Oh Lord.
his decision to resign and such. What is your opinion on that situation, and how do you think he should have handled that? We'll go to Epideli first. 2 minutes.
So I believe you're speaking of the abortion issue.
Correct.
Okay, so this, if I were in his position, I would first of all not touch the abortion subject. Abortion is way too of a divisive issue for Mac, and we should keep it how we mostly all agree on a consensus. Don't touch it. Leave it. And I think he's a great friend of mine, but I think that he should not have done that. He brought it upon himself, and he can't blame anyone else for it.
Okay. And Mr. DeChristopher, your answer?
Well, I think that the abortion conversation is about women, so it should be discussed by the women. I believe that no man whatsoever should make the decision on what um, a woman should do with their body. It's just, to me, it's not right.
Okay. And we won't if you want to rebuttal that, you can, Epideli, but you just said that it was a divisive issue, so I assume you would not want to engage on abortion. Am I
I'm not engaged on that.
okay?
No.
Now we're going to move to the issue of energy in the state of Caesarea. For the past four or some odd governors we've had, however many governors we've had, it's been many. No governor has
7, I
addressed.
believe.
Yep, okay. No governor has addressed the issue of energy in the state and how energy funds are allocated in the state budget. Uh, what types of what types of energy would you be funding as governor, and what would you do to reform how energy is funded in the state? Since Abdel got the last question, we'll give it over to Wyatt. 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I think, well, not I think, when I get elected as governor, well, if, I will use solar energy because we cannot use energy that's just hurtful for the environment. It's not right. Um, it kills plants, it kills the whole environment. We need a type of energy that can energize Caesarea, that won't hurt no environmental um things whatsoever.
So you support only solar energy? Is that what you're saying?
Not only solar energy, shit. Not only solar energy, I also support well, I don't support fossil fuels, but if we have to use them, then I would do everything in my power to make sure that fossil fuels won't get into the way of hurting the environment.
I will let you answer the question, Epideli, just as a follow-up. Um,
Uh-huh.
just as a follow-up to Mr. DiChristopher's answer, are you
Okay.
aware?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Um, are you aware that to build solar panels, you need to use fossil fuels? And how would you direct the state government to try and find a solution to that issue?
I'll let him continue if he wants to respond to it. No, it doesn't bother me.
Wyatt?
So was that addressed to him or myself?
Well, you can answer the question too. I mean,
Okay,
what?
I'll answer the
Yeah,
question.
Well,
I don't.
oh,
So I believe Cesarea has never had a budget, which is one of our main flaws. And I think that's many states' flaws in the United States. I, as governor, I would direct more money to the government, to the environmental department, with which I would establish and head by one of our delegates. And I think we should mostly focus on solar. We should focus on hydro if that's possible. We could focus on wind turbines. But we have to take a moderate approach to this issue. We can't just vanquish all fossil fuels. We have to transition because you have to remember we have coal miners in West Virginia in our state. We cannot let those people go without jobs. We could try instead of getting them to work on these new things and getting their jobs transferred to more environmentally friendly energy sources. And I
Uh,
think that's the way of addressing it.
so same question to you. The process in which you make solar panels or wind turbines involves many natural gas use. It involves a lot of usage of natural gas. It involves usage of fossil fuels. It involves mining, which is detrimental to local economies around those mining facilities. What are we going to do to address this issue that solar panels and all of this green energy is built on a foundation of fossil fuels, and without fossil fuels, that energy could not exist?
I think, like I said, I think we need to take a moderate approach, see what we can do, because excuse me, it's nearly impossible to cut all carbon emissions at once. I think our state should do our part as long as other states should, but we also need, as your last question was, we have to see the long term effects of how those energy and those environmental pollutants are on the environment and how we are on people. Now, if this is too big of a cost for the environment, we may not even do sun panels. I'm sorry. Um, we just have to see. I think I would incentivize our Department of Energy into looking into that, and hopefully they deliver a report on my desk within the first week.
Okay, and moving on to another question.
May I say something
Of
real
course,
quick?
yeah, of course.
I actually found a budget that the former governor John Geller drafted, and he apparently funded the Department of Environment and Agriculture with 7.4925 billion, while the Department of Treasury with 20 billion and the Department of Education with 30 billion. I think that one of the ways that we can make Caesarea green is if we up the budget from 7.49 billion to, let's say, 10, but not 10, like 15 billion, because I'm looking and it's like the lowest funded department on this list.
I would like a rebuttal.
Okay, yeah, Epideli, go ahead.
So, being green has always been a focus of my campaign. And when I established the motto of Cesarea and the nickname of Cesarea as the Emerald of the North, and I promise you will stay that way under my governorship, it will get even more greener. Promise, guarantee, because I will live up to that name and I will protect it. I will protect the animals, the environment, the trees. We need to plant more trees. We need to switch energy sources as long as it's slowly and as long as we get there before total disaster is wreaked upon this nation and the world.
Okay,
Will
great. You
you
go ahead, Mr. Christopher.
hold on? Will you increase the funding for the Department of Environment?
Yeah, I mean that's one of my that's what I'm running my campaign on.
But will you fund it enough to make sure that Caesarea will be fully um independent on
Yeah, even
energy?
more actually.
Like,
I'd fund it even more than that
how so?
by taking away cutting departments that we will not need. We'd have to look at the budget first because we
Oh,
don't have a budget currently.
okay, okay. So you said cutting departments. Which departments are you thinking about cutting?
Well, we actually, I'd like to rephrase that. We don't have any departments to cut. We'd have to create departments and distribute
Mm,
them. So we'd have to look at the time.
Okay, so
okay.
you have both candidates have said they want to switch to alternative sources of energy, and they have both brought up solar and wind as an alternative source. Would you, as governor, be open to subsidizing the biomass industry? We'll start with Epideli.
I'd be open to it. We just have to look at this is always the thing, the long term effects of that and how it will affect our economy and people on jobs and so forth.
Are you
Very
aware
simple.
of Are you aware of what biomass energy is?
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate on what biomass energy is?
Biomass energy is an alternative form of energy that is produced by
Ah,
living things. Yes.
correct. And do you know what biomass facilities used? Living things is a bit of a stretch to what it actually is used.
More of like plants and sort of like that, like compost like issues.
The real answer
And
is wood chips, and that comes from trees, and there are multiple biomass facilities up and down the Northeast,
true. And
hundreds,
that's why
hundreds, in
I
fact. Let me finish my question. Hundreds, in
sure.
fact. The overwhelming majority of these facilities, almost nearly 90% of them, use almost all, nearly 99% of their energy output comes from burning trees. Uh, the people of this state um, love the environment that they live in. I was in Springfield earlier today. I was talking to those people. People love the environment. They love to hike. They love the trees. They love the mountains and the scenery we have. Don't you agree that when we use the trees that we have here that upkeep that scenery, that could be detrimental to the environment we have in a long-term way.
Sure, I mean, like I said earlier, we need to plant more trees as initiative to support the environment.
Cor-
Um,
Correct, but trees don't grow on a yearly
yeah,
basis or
they
a...
take time. They take like
Uh,
long times, decades to grow completely.
Okay,
Um,
Mr. DeChristopher,
may I
do you have an opinion on
respond to
this?
that?
Do you have an opinion on this, Mr.
Um,
DeChristopher?
yeah. Okay. Well, so you're supporting of burning trees,
no, I
but
said I would
you
look
said
into it. I'd have to look into it, see the long term effects. We have to look at if that's better for the environment rather than these fossil fuels. That's semi like it. It still requires the burning, which would produce the pollutants. We'd have to look long term.
hmm. Well, in my opinion, I will possibly I will not look into biomass energy, simply because that when biomass is burned, the chemical energy in biomass is released as heat. We do
Mhm.
not need that much heat in our atmosphere whatsoever. Um, I mean, some people would support it because it's used. The energy is comes from plants and living organisms, but I just don't support it because what's the point of um of doing it if it's going to create more heat in the
Yeah,
environment?
I'm going to be
It's
honest.
it
Like,
can it can
go ahead.
you can go ahead.
Okay, I said I'm open to it. That means I'm on the fence on this issue. I'd have to look even more into depth in this, but generally, is like you did say, it will heat up the environment, like sort of like the greenhouse effect. And I don't think we don't need much more of that, or else we're gonna hit a boiling point until we can't return. We'll go over the edge, and then we'll have the ice caps melting even more than they are, and then Caesarea is going to be one of the most effective states by global warming. So we need to make sure that will not happen.
Okay, moving on to infrastructure in the state of Caesarea. Like has been pointed out in this debate before, no budget has yet to be passed in this state. That has left the infrastructure for now multiple years, going on 10, in detriment and decay. Despite the federal moves towards infrastructure production in the country, Caesarea has still been decaying and declining because of lack of action on this in the state government. What specifically would you do as governor to improve the infrastructure in the state of Caesarea, and how would you facilitate that? Mr. DeChristopher, go ahead.
Well, one of my first acts as governor will be to draft and have the state senate pass a bill that will improve the state infrastructure because, like as you said, it's decaying, and we need to do something about it before a full-on crisis emerge in Caesarea and emerge throughout America. So we need to fix that immediately.
And the specifics for what you would do?
Well, I in the bill, I will have first of all, I will have reconstruction of all, well, not all, but roads, bridges, and tunnels that need repairing. They will go under a mandatory renovation so they can be, state of the art, so they can be new and fresh and not old and have it decay.
And do you support any kind of, or actually, I'll let you, that'll be a follow-up question for both of you. Epideli, go ahead with the initial
Mhm.
question. What are the
Okay,
specifics of the
so on the
infrastructure?
first day, on the first day, I would sign an executive order that would move that would create an incentive for the legislator to amend the con no not no not amend the constitution, sorry, to work with me on a spending bill that would go through how much we're spending on each department annually. In that, one of the most funded departments, I can promise you, will be the transportation, of which we would work with the roads and the infrastructure, and it would be one of the best in the country. Look, Cesarea has the worst roads and some of the worst roads in this nation and the worst infrastructure. This is unacceptable and it must be fixed.
Okay, and now
May
follow up.
I
Yes, you got a
may I
rebuttal. Yep.
you said that the infrastructure department will be the most funded in the budget,
I said one of the
correct?
most funded.
One of the
One of the
most.
most.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because Robert pointed out, we have a no budget, and our roads have to be horrible because we haven't been spending on them. Where my question is that I think that's one of the most horrible things about this state. We have not had leaders who have not crafted a budget, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Okay, any rebuttal to that, Mr. Christopher?
Yeah. Okay. So, you said that it will be one of the most funded. What about the Department of Health, education,
Yeah, I mean
those
we're
departments?
have departments, sure. We're having more departments than like 4, 5. We may have like 10, but we don't need to overspend in certain departments. I mean, education has to be one of the most highly spent ones, as does health department. Sure,
Okay.
those will probably be above that, but we'll have to look into the
Yeah.
specifics later about how much money we will have,
Mm-hmm.
um, because we have to do something with taxes. I doubt we're going to raise taxes. We may on the top income earners, but very little. It just depends on how much money we'll have and what that can do.
Okay.
Okay, now to the follow-up question on infrastructure. Would any of you support a moving towards further privatization or subsidizing private road companies to help build the infrastructure in this state? I'll send it to Epideli first.
Sure, privatization has always proved better than government intervention. In this case, roads. There is a town. Georgia's not in our state. I'm aware of that, but there's a town in Georgia. They have private road services such as trash can pickup, filling potholes, and do just the roads in general. In that city, there was hardly no complaints on the roads themselves. First of all, because they do not have government regulation on their backs, they have freedom to work, and they aren't constantly being burdened. They have by the government on their backs. So I would actually hopefully get privatized companies to work on these roads. It gets done faster statistically. It needs to get done quick, and it's more cost efficient.
And Mr. DeChristopher, would you support any
Um.
privatization of the roads?
Whew. I mean, no, not really, because with private companies, doing the roads, they're employing their own employees. They're you know, controlling. Well, I would put it in controlling, but yeah, like controlling their own employees. I will create more jobs with the Department of Energy and Infrastructure. They will join together to do this, and yeah.
Any rebuttal?
Rebuttal.
Yep.
hmm One second. I'm sorry. I'm eating something. Okay. So you said that you would put together Department of Energy and the Department of What did you say? The other one.
Infrastructure.
Okay, Department of Infrastructure and Energy.
Yep.
How will you create more jobs through there? I would think privatized jobs would create more, and it's more of an incentive to work. They don't have to follow, like I said, the government regulations. What what regulations would you put in place?
Well, wait. Well, hold
What
up.
would
Wait
their
a
pay
minute.
be? What would their pay be?
Their pay, their pay
Mhm.
will be higher than the minimum wage of Caesarea. We have the lowest. Well, we don't have the lowest, but we have one
No,
of the
we don't
lowest
even have
minimum wage.
minimum wage. Actually,
Really?
we don't. We no one's passed a law in Caesarea. Now we do
Well,
We are
there.
have a
Well,
national
we
minimum
Well,
wage
there
of
will be one
$13, I
passed.
believe.
Well, there will be one passed.
Okay. Any rebuttals to any of those said there, or is that exchange over?
No, I was just. Is it right that is the minimum wage 13 or was it 50? It's like 12.50, I think, or
The
13
minimum wage currently nationally is
national.
somewhere around 14.50, I think.
I was close. Okay, sorry about that.
And the $15 minimum wage bill is held up in the House currently. Okay.
Hmm.
So,
Great.
just to recap on that was a little bit confusing for the viewers. I'm not going to do any more questions on that. Just to recap, Epideli is open to some privatization of the roads. Mr. DiChristopher is not, just for any clarification. The next question is about, well, basically, it's a further continuation of the privatization question. How much of the government would you privatize? Would you move in the form of Chase Stevens and start to privatize things like the post office, and would you deem those unnecessary government projects, or would you raise the funding of those projects and start to improve them? I'll start with Mr. DeChristopher.
Okay, listen. There will be little to none privati privatization in the state government, because if we do that, there will be an increased chance of something like a scandal happening in the state government that we can't stop because of that.
And Mr. Epideli?
Certainly, the transportation department needs privatization, and so does the infrastructure. Um, the government projects would need privatization too, because the government spends way too much that's unnecessary on things, such as bathrooms in New York that were made by the government. They cost way too much and are unnecessary. And frankly, but we need to cut down on our spending, or else we can't fund things like the energy department or education. Those are more important than issues like bathrooms.
Uh,
So privatization, I believe.
hold on. Who is bringing up bathrooms as an issue, and how much money
No,
has the government spent on
the
bathrooms?
government spending. I believe there was one bathroom in New York City that the government built. It cost, I think it was some around $500 million or 300 million.
And was
Cost way
that
too much.
was that the city government, or was that the state
The
government?
state or
And what's the source on that? I mean,
Um, I forgot what it was.
that's just
It's been a while since I've heard about it, so
all
just
right. And rebuttal, Mr. DeChristopher?
uh I'm just confused on how did bathrooms get in that conversation, but no.
I would also add like what costs way too much with building roads too. I mean, we waste too much money there. I mean, just cutting off those little corners could add up to a lot.
Just
We
to
could
hold
focus
on,
more on our children.
just to
Oh,
clarify on what you said, did you say that the government improving infrastructure is too
No, I
much?
mean, no, I didn't. I meant the government not privatizing those uh, departments cost
Okay,
way
so
too much.
I'm a little confused here. Do you believe in some privatization of the roads, or do you think that through
Some. That's why I
and
said cutting little
but
corners.
do you believe that incrementally we should move towards full privatization of the roads,
Not full.
but
If that
nearly
makes sense.
complete?
Not nearly complete. Somewhere in the middle.
Okay,
so,
Mr. DeChristopher?
mm, well, no, not really. Well, one of the questions that have been getting on my mind through this debate is how will we pay for, the infrastructure and um the privatization of certain departments? And I have an answer for that. Well, we will be spending 223.75 billion. Because I am currently writing a budget bill if I do win this election, and I will put in $15 billion into the infrastructure department, so we can avoid the privatization, because that's just trouble right there, and so that we can build better roads, better bridges, better tunnels, better um everything.
And Mr. Epideli, do you have a rebuttal to that?
Sure. So do you know how much all of our taxpayer dollars together are and how much our bills put together make up money? Like how much money we have? Have you put all the bills together and calculated that?
Some the current sales tax is 6%, so that would give us revenue of about 165 billion.
Hmm.
So and I said that we will be spending um 223.75 billion, and we will be taking in 277.5 billion through taxes, not only sales taxes but other taxes as well, and we will have a surplus of about 50 billion.
Hmm. So I would like to add to that. I think one of my first things once I get into office would be an executive order lowering taxes on the middle class and increasing it on the upper class to pay for this. This would only be until we can be able to
Mm.
fix our roads and actually get an adjusting our budget correctly into what the people and the legislator think we need.
What about the lower class?
Lower class, the middle class, lower class, they all get tax cuts. Sure.
Mm.
They're the backbone of this great state. They're the ones who get us through this stuff. And so does our entrepreneurship, which I believe, once again, one of the first things once I get into office will be a tax cuts on small businesses.
Okay, and no one else has anything else to say on this issue, I assume? Unless Mr.
Mm-mm.
DiChristopher has something else he wants to say.
No, not really.
Okay. Um, sorry, I have to go back to the questions doc. Guns in the state. Uh, Another issue that has not
Mm.
been addressed by any governor yet so far is the Second Amendment in the state of Cesarea. Gun violence is still an issue, but it is getting better through federal action on this issue in past presidencies. What would you, as governor, do to address this issue to ensure that kids feel safe in their schools? Mr. DeChristopher?
I'm really happy that you asked this question because as a state legislator during my past times, I've actually drafted a bill called the Firearm Protections Act. This that bill would still respect the Second Amendment, but it'll also put restrictions on mentally unstable people from buying violent guns. Period. Um, this is sad, but my brother was actually he got shot and killed last year by a gun, and I would do day one. I would do everything in my power to make sure that bill will get passed through the state senate.
And Mr. Epideli?
Mhm. So first of all, I'd like to say I'm sorry for your loss last year.
Thank
Um,
you, thank you.
I but I think that one of the key things we must do in Cesaria is get universal background checks passed. We do not need crazy people or people who have mental issues running around with guns. It just does not work. And I'll also bring up it's not the gun itself; it's the person. We have to also look. We can't have these laws banning guns. I know you're not proposing that, but we can't have that. We have to respect the Second Amendment, but we also have to respect the people who have psychological issues. We can't allow them to have the weapons because they may do something that it's proven people with psychological issues cannot have guns, or there's a percent of an increased percentage of them doing violent things with that weapon. So, universal background checks, executive order. Number one, likely, or number two, after the tax cuts. Both are very important issues, but I think people's lives are too much at stake.
Mr. DeChristopher, do you have a rebuttal to that?
Um, Actually, yes. Um, yeah, this bill, like I said, will respect the Second Amendment, and it will also respect people who do not feel safe with guns roaming around the streets of Cesarea. So this is what I will do. I will add to this bill that I will restrict any mentally unfit people who has been evaluated by a medical professional from purchasing a firearm 21 years older, and that's it.
Okay, so I have a question. In that bill, what type of guns does it ban, or is there any ban on guns in that?
No, I'm guns, rifles, AK-47s, military style automatic guns, those type of guns. A
So you
handgun, I will work on that. I will actually do lots and lots and lots of research on whether handguns will influence
So did you say military style? What do you mean a military style? Because there are
like
weapons that aren't
automatic
assault
rifles.
rifles. Okay,
Yes, and
military.
assault
Okay,
rifles.
I'm glad you put a definition on that because there is a thing where people say
Yeah.
that, and they cannot. That can also apply to how a gun looks, which may not determine anything.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead, Epideli.
I think that we have to put some restrictions on where people can carry these guns. Sure, certain places, such as government buildings, it should be regulated, but I think mostly, like, if you're, I think you should have a right to carry it into some places as long as you have a background check on you and you have your license. You will be perfectly fine after extensive research on you and making sure that you are stable to carry that weapon.
And no rebuttal to that, Mr. Christopher?
Actually, yeah. Last year, or was it in 2018? I'm not pretty sure. There was a mass shooting in New Zealand, as we all know, and the prime minister there had banned a couple of military style guns, such as automatic rifles and assault rifles. My question is, why are we just staying froze to that in America? This is a very important issue, not only for Syria, but also for America, and we need to do something about this.
I think I'm gonna rebuttal to that, but I don't think
Yeah,
people should be walking around with AK-47 strapped to their side. That is absolutely
yeah,
absurd
that's
to
just
even do.
crazy.
Right? You shouldn't be doing that. I mean, sure, someone can carry around a pistol. It just depends on
Hmm.
what the gun holds and how much it can shoot and how much rounds it can shoot a minute.
Yeah,
And
because
you
someone just
have to
walking
look
down
at
the
depth
street.
on that. Because
Yeah, because
they're like, go ahead. Okay, sure.
someone walking down the street with AK-47 or an assault rifle, it's first of all, it's dangerous. It can be fearful for anyone around, especially children. Children will probably see that and probably will cry. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Moving on to energy, but not this time, not climate change. Energy prices for individual people. They are rising in this state and have been rising since the 2000s. What will you do as governor to lower energy prices and possibly break up the natural monopoly that is created from the New England energy infrastructure that we have in place? Wyatt?
Well, one of the things that I would do is that I will first of all, I will make sure I will research this the energy and how we use energy in Caesarea and how energy well, I know how it gets to houses, but how people use it. So I can draft a bill, work with the state senate to draft a bill that will lower the prices by at least 5 to 10%, so there can be money saved up.
And Epideli?
Okay, so what we need to do is break up those monopolies via legislation.
Hmm.
We need to create an incentive to people to reserve energy to decrease their costs, obviously. And I think that, that's really it. But we need to, like, we run commercials, maybe take some money, run commercials saying, look, if you save energy, it's better for the environment, first of all. and it saves you money. In the long run, saving energy is great. So incentive, breaking up the monopolies, two things.
Okay, and Mr. DiChristopher, do you have a rebuttal to that?
The only thing I have to say is that the prices are rising. The in the U.S. average for the retail price per kilowatt is $10.48. That's just no. In Hawaii, even though Hawaii is not a part of Cesarea, the average price is $29. In Massachusetts, $18.05. That's just absurd.
Okay, and moving on to some very minuscule micro issues that you'd have to be dealing with as governor. Snow removal. What would you as governor do to make the process of snow removal much more efficient, especially in the rural areas where connections to snow companies are much harder? Connections to private snow companies are much harder to get, and it ends up ruining the roads, cracking them harder, making us spend more money on the state. And what are you as governor going to do about that?
This question
Who's
to me.
who's
Oh
this
yeah,
question
sorry,
for?
sorry. Wyatt.
Oh, well, being born and raised in Buffalo, New York, the snow central, lots of snow in the wintertime. I will increase funding to local government um vehicles that are used to remove the snow. We need to increase the fleet so anytime snow falls on the ground and if there's a lot that we would get it removed in less than 30 minutes, no less.
And Epideli?
So I think what we have to do is take the money we put into the infrastructure and the transportation. We need to work and invest in those communities by putting more snow scraping trucks in those communities and possibly selling them to the private companies. This would gain tax. This would actually gain money, and it would also like you take care of the issue of the snow. We just need to make sure those people are working. We need to incentivize them to work, and we need to show off the pride for those snow pushers that get rid of the snow because that is a dangerous job, or it can be.
So
No one else.
I might have missed something in what you said, but did you say you're gonna incentivize more snow removal workers by showing state pride for the snow removal workers?
That, and I did mention the uh, getting companies to tax breaks to uh, put more snow remover trucks in those communities, if that
Ah,
makes any sense.
okay. And Mr. DeChristopher, you said you would remove snow in 30 minutes of it falling on the ground. How would you facilitate this in states such as Pennsylvania, where there are houses miles away in fields, or states like New
Oof.
Hampshire, where there are regions surrounded by mountains with towns with treacherous
Hmm.
roads in between? How would you facilitate something like this?
Well, that's who. Well, I will probably have snow removal trucks stationed in areas like that, so that when the snow falls, that it won't take like 3 to 5 hours for them to get there to remove the snow, or have the homeowner shovel the snow. I mean, they can shovel the snow, but like it's probably gonna be a lot of snow, especially in Pennsylvania in the mountain regions.
Okay. And Epideli, same thing to you. How would you facilitate it beyond tax breaks and such? How would you ensure that these trucks are getting to those houses across the state?
Hopefully we could get some word from the locals. Hopefully they would report back, and maybe the companies would show back. We'd have to look. I'm sure we'll have some workers for the government in those towns, hopefully, to check up and see how it's going. I mean, it depends on the snow conditions. If it's like very low, no problem. But when it gets to like a foot, we need someone looking there, making sure it's getting done. And if those companies aren't getting those, we'll just take the tax cuts away. Simple.
Okay. Now moving on to uh, excuse me. Moving on to another kind of micro issue in the state. Fish and Game is another department that is yet to be created throughout in a statewide provincial manner. This has led to many lakes being not only infested with foreign fish from dumping, but illegal fishing and lower fish populations from overfishing. Uh, what would you as governor do to facilitate a new New Hampshire Fish and Game and save the lakes and ponds that are so essential to the landscape of this region uh, and protect our beauty? We'll start with Epideli.
So, first of all, we have to establish the Cesarian Wildlife Game and Fish Commission. We need to make sure that we have wardens going out looking, seeing if people are following the guidelines of which we'll set up, likely how much deer you can kill, how much fish you can catch, so forth. A little regulation on that front, and like the establishment once again of the wildlife department or game and fish. I think that will do it as long as we have those people going out there doing that. I think we'll cover that and protect those people and the animals, of course.
And Mr. DeChristopher?
I think that we should put restrictions on this because this can hurt the rivers of Cesarea, such as like Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, the Finger Lakes. We need to do something. We need to put restrictions. We need to increase law enforcement patrols along shores. And if we catch anyone illegally fishing, then they will have to pay a fine.
Okay. And any rebuttal to that, Epideli? Nope. Okay. Now we're going to get to kind of competency in the office. You all have talked about and have many plans for facilitating a new change and um, a better Caesarea in your vision. But how can the people of Caesarea have heard this over and over again for the past couple of elections. Only a few governors have actually delivered on that message. How can we trust you as a candidate to deliver on that message and then actually get stuff done for this district or for this state? Sorry, used to federal office. Wyatt, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm experienced. I know what I'm doing. I'm a man of my word. Anything that I say will get done will, in fact, get done. In less than 5 days of when I become governor. Yeah.
Okay, and Epideli?
Okay, look, the last governor's race ran in and lost. I said that I would establish the capital, make the new flag. I would establish the first state park and all the other things. Look, without being elected governor, I did those things in the legislature. Just imagine what we could do if I was elected governor on behalf of the Cesarian people. L- That's really it. I think I have a great, or I think that's the better Cesaria. I've led up to all my promises, even though I wasn't even elected to the office. I think we could do 10 times more if we are elected to the governor's office, and the movement persists, and we get there in a week.
All right, and just to make it clear for the people of Caesarea who are going to make their own decision, but you are running against each other. What I think it's important for you to point out the differences between each other. What are the main differences that you have with your fellow candidate, and why do those differences make you a better candidate than your colleague? We'll start with Epideli.
I think the thing that separates myself and Mr. or the Lieutenant Governor is perhaps our vision for Cesaria. Look, like I said, I've laid out my vision for Cesaria. I have worked on it, and I will continue to work on it if I'm elected to Cesarian political position ever again.
And okay, and Wyatt.
Look, I have been planning for so long to when I become governor that we will get any and everything done within the first 2 weeks. I think the difference between me and Epideli is that he said our visions, I believe. Um, that is true. My visions, I believe, are to a higher standard, and they will benefit the people more.
Okay. No, no rebuttals to that. I think we'll have this. This has been the last question of this pretty civil debate. I want to thank both candidates for being here. I look forward to the election next week, and uh, again, thank you both for being here. Uh, we'll do some closing statements. Closing statements. We'll start with Epideli. No time limit. Just do how much I have.
Okay, so first of all, once again, I'd like to thank the CBS affiliate, you, Robert. I'd like to thank Mr. DiChristopher for attending. I'd like to thank Boston Convention Center for hosting. Look, this election is going to be one that will determine the future of our state. Look, both of us want to improve this. Both of us will be stable than a lot more of these people who've ever held this office. The question is, which direction do you want to go? And I'll leave that up to the people. I will
And
listen to what you say, and I will support your decision. God bless you all.
Wyatt DiChristopher.
This is the most critical election in Cesarian history. We need a leader in the executive branch of the governor's office that will, in fact, listen to the people. Someone that will draft and work with state senators and his cabinet will, better benefit the people. This, like I said earlier, that we have the most unorganized state government in America. We need to change that now. We need vote for someone who you can trust. And I believe that is me. I believe that both me and Epideli are qualified. But I think that I am a better choice when it comes to leading the people. And I want to thank everyone who tuned into this debate. I want to thank the moderator, Robert. I want to thank Epideli for basically challenging me to this debate. And that's all. God bless you all, and God bless the Commonwealth of Caesarea.
Thank you for joining us for the CBS News Cesarea gubernatorial debate. Be sure to vote next Friday and tune in to The View tomorrow for the presidential election live stream.